Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Old Time Rock and Roll. I'm your host, David Tear, where all year I've been featuring my personal top 3,000 rock songs of all time from 1954 to 1999. Today I'm up to song number 2968, and that is Say It Isn't So, Hall Oates. This is the album. Well, actually, this is the singles cover. And this is the album it came off of, Rock and Soul Part 1. They actually had another album called Rock and Soul Part 2. These were both compilation albums. I believe Part 1 had basically their greatest hits up to that point, like a dozen of the greatest hits. And they had a lot of hits. They were a very, very successful duo. As a matter of fact, I think they were the most successful duo, at least at the time in the 80s. According to Billboard, they surpassed, I remember when they surpassed the Everly Brothers as the biggest duo of all time. I think that was around 1984. I was in college at the time. So anyway, here's a picture of them. They were a very famous duo, like I said. They got started in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in 1970. They first made it big, I believe, in 1976. They had a couple hit songs that year, including "Sarah Smile" and "She's Gone." And then in '77, they had this. I actually bought this album. It was called Bigger Than Both of Us. It wasn't a very good album, but it had one of their biggest hits on it called Rich Girl, which I really like. I think that's my favorite of their songs, actually. A lot of people think that song's about Patty Hearst. It turns out it's not. I think it was about Daryl Hall's girlfriend, who was pretty materialistic. But I really like that song. And then I don't know, they didn't have any really big songs for a while. They had a couple kind of small hits in the late '70s after Rich Girl. They had It's a Laugh in '78 and Wait for Me in '79. But that was about it. And then all of a sudden, 1980, they came up with this album called Voices, which I really loved. I mean, I heard it, for the first time, I guess, when I was in college. A lot of my dorm mates were playing it, and I liked just about every song on this album. This had several big hits. It had a remake of "You've Lost That Love and Feeling," originally done by the Righteous Brothers in '65, but I think Hall and Oates did a really good version of that song too. And then they had a number one song called "Kiss on My List" in '81. They also had "You Make My Dreams." And I think that might be my favorite song on this album. This was also used in the movie of the 500 Days of Summer. There's a very funny scene where they play this song. I guess after the main character, I forget his name, after he gets laid. But it's a good song, and a lot of these other songs are really good too. And they had they wrote the original, or they came up with the original version of "Every Time You Go Away." That became a number one hit 4 years later by Paul Young in '85. And I don't think Paul Young's version is as good. Uh, and they had a couple other songs I liked that weren't hits. They had a song called "United State," which I thought was kind of funny. They also had another song called "Got a Lot of Nerve, Perfect, Perfect," which I thought was really funny because he's criticizing his girlfriend about how she thinks she's perfect. And anyway, so that was just the album Voices. But then they went on to have many, many more big hits in the '80s. I think, they had a total of six number ones altogether. Already mentioned Rich Girl and Kiss on My List. After that, they had Private Eyes and they had Private Eyes in '81, and then they had I Can't Go for That in '82, and Maneater also in '82, and then they had Out of Touch in '84, and of course they had this hit, Say It Isn't So, which almost went to number one. It got to number two. And the only song that held it out it was number two for 4 weeks, actually. It's not really one of my favorites of theirs. That's why it's only number 2968. I've got plenty more of their songs coming up on the list, including most of the ones I mentioned. But then the song that held this song out of the top spot was "Say Say Say." This song was number one for 6 weeks. This was a duo between Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. As you all know, Michael Jackson was really big in '83. He had just released his Thriller album, which was one of the biggest albums of all time. And I think you all know Paul McCartney of the Beatles. I mean, so this was a very, very famous duo, and they had a couple hits together. This was their biggest. They also had a song called "The Girl Is Mine," which I believe was featured on Thriller. Anyway, that's my profile on Sadism So by Hall and Oates. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.